I was less than 10 minutes from home when my phone rang. It was Maria, our housekeeper. She never called me during work hours, so I answered immediately. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Ma'am, whatever you do, don't come home yet." I slammed on the brakes. "Maria, what's wrong?" There was a long silence before she said the words that changed my life forever. "I think you need to see this with your own eyes." She told me to open the security cameras instead of driving home. I tapped the app, expecting a burglary or an emergency. Instead, I watched my husband unlock our front door, smiling at another woman like the house belonged to both of them. I had no idea that was only the beginning. My name is Colonel Emily Carter. I'm 42 years old, and for more than 20 years I've served in the United States Army overseeing logistics operations. My career taught me to stay calm under pressure, verify facts before reacting, and never let emotions make decisions my training should make instead. Those habits had carried me through deployments, emergencies, and impossible deadlines. I never imagined they would one day save me inside my own marriage. Daniel and I had been married for 15 years. Military life wasn't easy on either of us. Long assignments, unexpected travel, missed anniversaries, and countless lonely evenings tested our relationship. Still, I believed trust was stronger than distance. Every time duty called, I left home believing my marriage was waiting exactly where I'd left it. Maria had been our housekeeper for 10 years. Calling her a housekeeper never felt completely right. She was family. She remembered birthdays, watered my mother's roses whenever I deployed, and somehow always knew when either of us needed encouragement. In 10 years, she had never involved herself in our personal lives, which was exactly why her phone call terrified me. I reopened the security app and switched between every camera. The woman walked confidently through our front door behind Daniel, like she already knew the house. They weren't acting nervous. They weren't looking over their shoulders. They looked comfortable. Then Daniel unlocked the cabinet where we kept important family records. He removed folders, jewelry cases, and several document envelopes before placing everything neatly on the dining room table. The woman photographed page after page with her phone while Daniel searched another drawer. Neither of them spoke much. They didn't need to. Whatever they were doing had clearly been planned long before today. I pulled into a quiet parking area outside the base instead of driving home. My hands stayed steady. My heart didn't, because I suddenly realized I wasn't watching the beginning of a betrayal. I was watching the middle of one. I sat in my SUV with the engine off, the summer heat slowly filling the cabin, but I barely noticed. My eyes stayed locked on the security app as I downloaded every clip from that afternoon. Then a thought crossed my mind. What if today wasn't the first time? I opened the recording history and started working backward. Yesterday. Nothing unusual. 2 days earlier. Still nothing. Then I reached the previous Friday. At exactly 2:18 p.m., Daniel unlocked the front door while I was leading a logistics readiness briefing nearly 200 miles away. Less than 3 minutes later, the same woman walked inside carrying a leather tote bag. They stayed for 46 minutes. I watched them move through nearly every room in the house. The office. Our bedroom. The filing cabinet. The safe hidden behind the bookshelf. She photographed documents while Daniel opened drawers and sorted through folders with surprising confidence, almost like they were following a checklist they had already rehearsed. I checked another day. Then another. The pattern repeated itself over and over. My stomach tightened. This hadn't started last week. It had been happening for months. My phone rang. Maria. "I'm so sorry, Colonel," she whispered. I didn't know what to do. I noticed them coming several times, but today I saw Mr. Carter carrying your father's medal case. That's when I knew something wasn't right. I closed my eyes. "My father's medals?" I asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am." He put them back before leaving, but the woman took pictures of everything on your desk. "Thank you for telling me," I replied. "You did exactly the right thing." After ending the call, I downloaded every recording onto an encrypted drive and organized each file by date and time. Then I called someone I trusted completely. Not Daniel, a military legal advisor. Before speaking to my husband, I intended to understand exactly what I was looking at and how to protect myself if the truth became even worse than it already appeared. I spent the next several hours doing something my military career had trained me to do better than almost anything else. Build a timeline. Emotion could wait. Facts couldn't. I opened our financial records, insurance accounts, investment statements, and property documents one file at a time. At first, everything appeared perfectly normal. Then the small details started connecting. A life insurance beneficiary update. An investment account with recent changes. Several automatic transfers into an account I didn't recognize. Nothing by itself proved betrayal. Together, they painted a picture that had obviously taken months to create. Then I found digital copies of paperwork prepared by a family law office. No filing date. No signatures. Just draft documents waiting for the right moment. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep reading. Daniel hadn't been planning a difficult conversation. He'd been planning an exit. My phone buzzed again. Maria. I remembered something else, she said quietly. Mr. Carter used to ask when you'd be leaving for training exercises. He always wanted to know exactly how many days you'd be gone. I looked out the windshield toward the highway. Did he ever say why? He always smiled and said he wanted to surprise you before you came home. There was a long silence. I don't think that's why anymore. Neither did I. You've helped me more than you know, Maria, I told her. None of this is your fault. After hanging up, I changed every password that legally belonged to my personal accounts, notified my bank to place additional verification on future transactions, and secured digital copies of every important document. Only then did I finally check my phone again. Daniel had sent a message 20 minutes earlier. Everything okay? Are you almost home? I stared at the screen for several seconds before locking my phone. He sounded like a caring husband, but after everything I'd uncovered, I realized something that chilled me far more than the cameras ever had. He had absolutely no idea I already knew his carefully built plan was falling apart. I didn't pull into the driveway until almost 7 that evening. Daniel was already standing on the front porch. The moment he saw my SUV, he smiled and walked toward me like every other evening we'd shared for the past 15 years. There you are, he said as I stepped out. I was starting to worry. I had a long day, I replied, forcing a tired smile. He kissed my forehead, the same familiar gesture that had once made me feel safe. Now it only reminded me how easily trust could wear a convincing disguise. Inside, dinner was already cooking. He moved around the kitchen comfortably, telling me about meetings, traffic, and a supplier who had apparently delayed an important shipment at work. I listened carefully, not because I believed him, because I wanted to remember every word. Halfway through dinner, I casually asked, "So, what time did you leave work today?" He barely looked up. "About 6. I nodded. "Busy all afternoon?" "Completely. Didn't even have time for lunch." I took another bite before speaking again. "That's strange." He finally looked at me. "Why?" "I drove past your office around 2. His expression changed for the briefest moment. "So, you were nearby?" "Just passing through." He forced a laugh. "You should have called." I thought about it. Silence settled between us. Later that evening, while he loaded the dishwasher, I spoke without looking at him. Maria mentioned she thought someone had been inside the house while we were gone. His hands stopped moving. For what reason? She wasn't sure. Another pause. Then came the question I had been waiting for. "Did you happen to check the security cameras?" There it was. Not concern about Maria. Not curiosity about who might have entered. Only the cameras. I turned slowly and met his eyes. "Yes," I answered calmly. "I checked them." Neither of us spoke again. But in that long, uncomfortable silence, I realized something important. The footage hadn't exposed him. His reaction had. The next morning, I asked Daniel to sit with me in the living room before either of us left for work. He looked confused but not alarmed. "What is this about?" he asked. I placed my laptop on the coffee table between us. "I just want to clear up a few things." I pressed play. The first clip showed him unlocking our front door while I was away on duty. The second showed the woman entering behind him. The third showed them standing over our dining room table, photographing documents and opening drawers. Daniel watched without saying a word. When the videos ended, he slowly leaned back in his chair. It isn't what it looks like. I had expected that answer. So tell me what it is. He rubbed both hands across his face. We were organizing paperwork. With someone you've never introduced your wife? He hesitated. She's someone I've been seeing. The room became perfectly still. Not because I was shocked anymore. Because hearing the truth out loud somehow felt heavier than watching it unfold on a screen. I never planned for you to find out like this, he said quietly. I looked directly at him. No, Daniel. You planned for me not to find out at all. His shoulders dropped. I was going to tell you. When? He didn't answer. Instead, he stared at the floor. I didn't know how. I slid the printed financial records across the table. The account transfers. The draft separation paperwork. The timeline I had assembled. His face lost what little confidence remained. You went through everything. I had to. I replied calmly. Because every answer I needed was hidden somewhere you hoped I'd never look. Several long seconds passed before he finally whispered the words I already knew were coming. I've been planning to leave. I nodded once. I know. Then I stood and walked toward the front door. You should start looking for somewhere else to stay. For the first time since this nightmare began, Daniel didn't argue. He simply picked up his keys and quietly walked out of the house. 6 months later, I was sitting on the back patio of a much smaller home, watching the sun disappear behind the trees with a cup of coffee in my hands. For the first time in a very long while, the silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. The divorce had been handled professionally. There were lawyers, paperwork, difficult conversations, and more signatures than I cared to remember, but there were no dramatic courtroom scenes or public arguments. The evidence had spoken for itself long before either of us did. The financial records protected what needed protecting. The security footage answered every remaining question. Most importantly, I never had to wonder whether I had imagined any of it. Maria still worked with me. The day everything ended, she apologized for calling, convinced she had destroyed my marriage. I smiled and told her the truth. You didn't destroy it. You simply refused to let me keep living inside a lie.
She cried.
So did I. Not because I wanted Daniel back. Because I finally understood how close I had come to spending years believing everything was normal, while someone else quietly planned my future without me. My military career continued. If anything, I appreciated it even more. Service had taught me discipline, patience, and resilience. Those same qualities carried me through the hardest chapter of my personal life. I also started reconnecting with people I had unintentionally neglected while trying to hold together a marriage that only one person was truly protecting. One afternoon, as I packed away the last box from my old house, I found our wedding album. I looked at it for a long moment. Then I closed it, placed it gently on the shelf, and walked away. Not with anger. Not with regret. With acceptance. People often ask whether I wish Maria had stayed silent. My answer never changes. The most painful truth is still better than the most comfortable lie. Sometimes the person who saves your future isn't the loudest voice in your life. It's the quiet one who finds the courage to tell you the truth before it's too late.